The FIA has voted a new set of rules that will see the drivers fuming, as apparently their championship points are now at a huge risk, despite the hefty penalties that they're going to pay if they continue with the misconducted behaviour. According to the new articles, the drivers would have to watch their written, verbal and body language if they want to avoid penalties that could turn out to be pivotal for the championship. But is this a massive revenge from the FIA? And more importantly, is it proof that Ben Sulayem's place is not in this sport anymore? The governing body of the sport released an updated version of the sporting code recently with guidelines for breaches that would be committed under Article 12, particularly with regards to misconduct. As of now, the FIA believes that misconduct is not just the swearing that the drivers do in a very frequent manner, which has been a very hot topic recently, but also the general use of language, which can be written, verbal, or even gestures and signs that are offensive, insulting, rude, abusive, or coarse. This involves assaulting, such as elbowing, kicking, punching, and hitting other personnel and drivers, or incitement to do any of the above. Now, the new penalty system is quite controversial because they have base fines and are multiplied by 4 for the F1 drivers, given the fact that they are expected to cause the most breaches in it. However, seeing your championship points taken away after the 3rd penalty is something that might have taken things to such an extent that it could be even too far away for Ben Sulayem. Committing an infraction within the bounds of misconduct includes €10,000 for the first offence, which would be €40,000 for an F1 driver, rising to €80,000 for the second penalty, and a suspended 1-month suspension on the second offence. I know that the last sentence might have confused you a bit, but it is practically a 1-month suspension that wouldn't be active until the F1 driver commits the 3rd penalty, which would then be €120,000. An activated 1-month suspension and a deduction of championship points. Yes, you heard that right. Instead of losing the points by being passed on the track, by crashing, or by a DNF because of a variety of reasons, the drivers might lose points and not race for 1 month based on, I don't know, saying the F word 3 times throughout the season. Of course, the deduction of points is something very big, but if you think about it, the 1-month suspension is a very cruel penalty too. Imagine if we are headed into a month that will pose a triple header ahead of us and the driver won't be able to participate in any of these 3 races. That would definitely hurt the chances of scoring better results regardless of the level of competition, fighting in the back, the midfield, or for the championship. The FIA might maybe have taken things a bit too far this time, but with the recent reshuffle in the governing body and the backlash that Ben Sulayem received from his former colleagues, it's now evident that he is trying to prove a point that he is here to stay and not make a joke out of the sport. But this is not where it all ends. The penalties won't be granted for the misconduct behaviour that we explained above. They will be applied to drivers who will use any words, deeds or writings that have caused moral injury or loss to the FIA, its bodies, its members or its executive officers, and more generally on the interest of motorsport and on the values defended by the FIA and any public incitement to violence or hatred. I guess you understood what this part means. We're going to see the drivers having to shut up when it comes to criticising the work of the stewards, something they've found very hard to do given the fact that we've had quite unfair judgment from the stewards themselves and penalties dished out left, right and centre for a variety of reasons that wouldn't have been penalised in the past. And of course, where would the FIA be if they didn't mention the political and religious beliefs of the drivers? The fines remain the same for any driver who would try to promote a political, religious or personal statement without previous approval of the FIA. And if they don't do that, they would be deemed to make a full public apology for their remarks and retraction of their comments. Luckily for the F1 drivers, the latter part doesn't fall in the category of misconduct, but nevertheless, this has been in the sport for quite some time and it's not going to change, so it's not actually a positive thing either. How many times did we mention the word penalty so far in the video? I guess not enough, because the FIA is not done. Harsher penalties will be applied for any failure to comply with the instructions of the FIA regarding the appointment and participation of persons during official ceremonies at any competition counting towards an FIA championship. These penalties start at a base of a €15,000 fine, and if there is another offence, it rises to €30,000 plus a suspension of access to reserved areas of the event for the next event. This can include everything starting from the track, continuing to the paddock, parc fermé, and ending all the way to the media zones. If the teams haven't learned their lesson by now, the third time will see them being fined €45,000 plus a 6-month suspension from the defined areas, and all of these fines are going to be multiplied by 4 for the F1 drivers. These penalties and revisions come in a very interesting period where the F1 drivers have been quite vocal about the leadership of the FIA and their transparency, and one of the questions raised was, where does the governing body spend the money that is being paid by the drivers in terms of fines? When Max Verstappen touched Hamilton's rear wing back in 2021, he was fined €50,000, to which he said that he hopes the FIA and the stewards would have a nice dinner and they might invite him as well, which will definitely fall under the misconduct policy today if it was to happen. Furthermore, we've seen Verstappen holding his own F1 conferences in the ending days of 2024 just to prove that he can say what he wants when he wants, and he won't be controlled by the FIA. Another penalty because he would be morally hurting the FIA members and its stewards. It's yet to be seen how the drivers will react to this, but the governing body has thrown the glove and there's nothing much the teams and the drivers can do at this point other than protest or go on a strike. With all of the latest changes in the FIA and all of the high personnel leaving, there have been some questions from the GPDA led by Russell, who declared more transparency to the governing body as to who they are going to fire and who is going to replace them. To this, Ben Sulayem replied that he doesn't get into the team's politics and neither should they get into how the FIA is being run, something for which he received support from Wolf and Horner as long as it's beneficial for the sport. Right now, I doubt that Sulayem can count on the support of any team principal given the latest changes, especially with the points deduction and the 1-month suspension that could potentially kill the popularity of the sport, which was earned on a very hard basis. Nicolas Tombazis, the FIA's head of single-seater racing, made a statement regarding the money being well spent that reflects the attitude of the governing body as to what's happening in their inner circles. And when addressing this situation, he said, "The FIA is not a profit-making organisation. We don't have shareholders who are looking at some numbers in the stock exchange and hoping for share prices to go up or get more dividends or anything like that. I think this question is sometimes slightly influenced by the emotions of the moment or whatever fine is being discussed and so on. I realise that anyone who is paying a fine is always slightly annoyed about it and may feel somewhat aggrieved, but for sure there are so many different levels of projects that you can never come to the conclusion that this money is somehow spent for Christmas parties and so on. The amount of money spent in grassroots exceeds the fines accumulated, which I think indicates that anything that goes in there will have a positive impact." I doubt that the F1 drivers will accept this answer as a positive one when their pockets will be getting dried out by the FIA, but nevertheless, here we are. And with all this in mind, do you think that the governing body has taken the situation a bit too far with their latest penalty system? And furthermore, do you think that there is something that the drivers could do in order to make the FIA revise these new rules and return back to normal? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're interested in Hamilton's first test in Fiorano, make sure to check out the video that's appearing on your screen right now.